I know viewers are excited to have Lee back. I'm getting a lot of emails. You know, sometimes doing this show, Lee, I feel like I'm driving like a 1998 Buick. You got to like hit the choke just like this and start it up just like that, or it doesn't quite work. How you doing?
I'm good. You know, I feel, is the screen behind me on? There we go. The CGS.
It's coming up.
That's all I'm looking for. But
I bet you didn't realize that Buick still had a choke in 1998.
Now, you know, I mentioned you on the show today, Jason, aside from mentioning this tonight's episode. But the other thing, and I got a weird, I don't know why it's laggy, but it is. But the audio is fine, right?
Whoa, it is, but we just had a little pan. There we go.
There we go. But I mentioned that you told me they're not making Corvettes. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
This year? Okay.
They closed the
then
factory.
I got it right. That's all I wanted to check. Yeah, okay. We're talking about the high price of used cars right now.
Right. And the difficulty in getting your Ford Escape fixed. You got to call the woman who's the product manager if you want to get any traction with that.
Well, actually, that brings us to the topic I wanted to talk about tonight a little bit. So I'm dealing with this, and, you know, again, it's tricky on the divorce thing because it's a divorce. So on one hand, I don't want to get into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
And for the sake of my kids and for the sake of my wife. But.
And the case.
And, well, so I'm going to talk about the case for a second.
Sure.
And I'm going to talk about getting your car fixed and journalism, because I think a lot of times, I'll tell you what I've learned in this divorce case where I'm my own lawyer.
Yeah.
Okay. My training as a journalist really helps. And it's something I want people to think about a little bit. And I'm sure the work you've done as a journalist helped you get your car fixed quicker, right?
You're right. Yes.
Right. So you see what I'm saying? I mean, it sounds a little weird, but the point I want to make is the advantage of having some journalistic skills goes beyond politics. And the thing specifically I'm dealing with is a report in my divorce has come out. And the report, okay, so it's an evaluation. And I'm not actually going to debate any of the conclusions. Does that make sense? In other words,
yeah.
I don't care about the conclusions. And I would never waste anybody's time going into court going, well, she says I'm a bad parent, but I'm awesome. Or she says I'm an awesome parent, you know, but I would never do that.
Right.
But a lot of it, and when you're dealing with a legal case, a lot of it's based on factual premises. So I'll give one example that is non-controversial, and it's about me, okay? I noticed in this report that she states at the beginning, Lee Stranahan was born on, September 10th, 1965. He grew up in Massachusetts, and so then she says he dropped out of high school at 15. Then she says, and then he married and blah, blah, and then she goes on from there. Now, let me just stop right there for a second. That's literally, that's what she says. He dropped out of college at age 15. Objectively speaking, when you read that about somebody, how does it sound to you?
Not flattering.
Not flattering, right? Now, what she doesn't mention at any point ever is that the reason I dropped out of college at age 15 was to start, high school at age 15, was to start college. I started Bard College at Simon's Rock. Literally, it wasn't like I dropped out at 15, then 20 years later. I dropped out at at the end of the school year. And in September, I started at Simon's Rock at Bard. Okay? She doesn't mention that. Then she doesn't mention that when I was 16, I attended Springfield Technical Community College as a radio and television broadcast major. Okay?
You have always been a super industrious guy, self-starter. This type of attack on your character and capability is a mistake.
Well, so here's the other thing. She then says later that my son Jack, who you know, Jack, had made the statement that he's self-taught in video. Now,
well, wait a minute.
Right. And here's the thing. I'm not trying to take away. Jack learned a lot of stuff on his own. But I'll tell you who else isn't. Okay, so you've known me for a long time. You know my brother. My brother's super talented. I don't take credit for him, but I have always had a commitment to my family. And I took care of my brother and helped introduce him to people and get him into the industry. And then
I'd like to augment what you're saying, actually.
Go ahead.
Because I knew you, Lee, from back in the day, in video toaster days. You produced a series of videos about how to use the video toaster and how to use Lightwave 3D, and I super wanted to know about that. And I had this crazy idea that I would save money by not buying your videotapes by doing this whole lecture series in New York, which wound up costing 30 times more than the videotapes. But the point is, when I called you to say, hey, Lee, come and do a seminar in New York, you said, well, you should also invite my brother, Kenny. And then I did.
And my point is, this is actually relevant to the divorce, because one of the arguments that I'm a good parent is that I'm a good parent, is that I've always been involved with my kids. I teach them skills, right? And that's nowhere in this report. Here's another thing. One of my character references is a guy, Dwayne, and she mentions Dwayne has 13 children. Now, right. What's your just first impression? This guy with 13 kids.
I would.
By the way, spoke
guess
highly.
He's like very religious, maybe, and sometimes.
She never mentions the name most people know him by, which is Dog the Bounty Hunter.
Ah.
So she calls him.
He had 13 kids.
Yeah, and by the way, Dwayne was in prison for first-degree murder when he was like 17, 18 years old. He's had a very, he's had a very interesting life, but he turned it around, right? And obviously, and by the way, Dwayne was one of my character references, but she doesn't mention, and by the way, do you know how I became friends with Dog and his wife, Beth, is we talked video production because the first time we talked, she dropped a couple hints and I said, this woman might know production. And then we were out for a drive. And I said, let me ask you a question. How did you do your insurance? Did you use Truman Van Dyke? Did you, and that is the most boring question in the world. But, but you know, if someone says that to you, they know what they're talking about.
Right.
And she immediately answered and told me how she was renting the edit bays out and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, this lady knows video production. Now, again, there's no, and the other thing she said factually in here, and I'm going to tell you the reason I'm telling you this in a second. So let's go back to when I dropped out of high school, okay? What she said was true. I dropped out of high school at age 15. But she left out to go to college, and that and she makes me seem like a thug. That's what I said that in a letter to her. I said, you're making me sound like a street thug, like I just dropped out. She doesn't mention, and even when she mentions, she says, he claims to have worked at Access Hollywood and
claims. I mean, you did. I saw
and
you there.
Breitbart. Right. She said, I claim to, but he doesn't give any dates. She never asked you for dates, right?
That's a lawyer who wrote that.
Well, it's an evaluator. But okay, you're getting very close to the point I'm making here. The point I'm making is I was able to realize how she was lying, which is she was not lying and saying Lee dropped out of high school when he was 10, right? That'd be a lie. She was telling the truth, but not the whole truth. And
Right.
and it's a 28-page document. And without going into detail, she does that over and over and over. It's true Dwayne's got 13 kids, okay? But the reason she mentioned it, and he says I'm a great dad, and he's hung out with me and my kids, and I loved my wife, and he was shocked by the divorce, and all that stuff. I think you would say the same thing. And but she makes him out to be just like, who's this guy? Not somebody. I'm surprised she didn't mention that he'd been in prison for on a first-degree murder charge, or had ridden with the Hells Angels, because he has.
I did not know that.
It's when he was like 17 or 18. Well, and I'll tell you a real quick, fascinating story about it. This is why I love Dwayne. I really love Dog. Like, I love that dude. And here's one of the reasons why. When so many people from a criminal background are not responsible people. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, duh.
Yeah.
Right? When Dwayne was in prison, and he's written about this in his book, when he was in prison for first-degree murder, he didn't do it. But he was, with the Hells Angels. One of them had.
Right.
And most criminals would at that point go, I didn't do this. It was a bum rap and blah, blah, blah. What Dwayne did is he sat there and he prayed and he looked at the prison wall, which is all bricks. And he said, Lord, I didn't do this one. But you know what? Every one of those bricks could be something I did do that they didn't catch me on. So he didn't fight it. You know what I'm saying? He was like, I deserve this. You know what I'm saying?
Huh.
And then when he was in prison, he developed a skill as a barber. He was a very good barber that the guards used to seek him out. And that's how he got into the bail bonds industry. And
for being a barber? Oh no, from knowing the guards.
From knowing the guards and being a model prisoner, right? So, there's a lot of people who in that circumstance would rail about injustice and everything else. And
or just become a harder criminal, I think, a lot of people going to jail.
And that's why, and I never watched Dog and Best show, but he told me about the first episode that aired of their show. And it is interesting because it's illustrative of his character. There was it was going to be a dog bounty hunter, and he's out and he's busting criminals like cops, okay? And they had filmed him with the guy he caught coming back, and Dog was talking to the guy, and he said, "Can I get you a cigarette? Do you want?" And he's like, "Yeah, hey brother, I arrested you here, but you want a cigarette?" And he treated him like a human being. And when the show aired, Dog was pissed at the producers because he's like, "Why did you put that in?" He's like, "I'm going to look like people want me to be a hard ass."
No, that was good.
And it was the highest rated segment of the show. And it's what made, and it's who he is. And by the way, he will bust you, right? There's no question. He will bust you, but he treats you with humanity and dignity. And I don't argue with that. That's the right thing to do. And so my point in the divorce thing was, once I figured out how she was going to lie and why it matters, because in this case it matters because I think it shows my parenting, and there's nowhere in there where she mentions that my Yeah, and by the way, if my kids weren't into video production or something, I would help them with that the best I could. But it just so happens my son Shane is a radio host who started.
You kind of got him the job.
I did.
Great.
As an engineer, then a producer, and then so I got him the job. It's not like he owes it to me, but I got him the job.
It was a good thing to do.
And my younger kids, I want to be able to do the same thing. And there's no examples on the other side of that happening at all. And therefore, and one of the things my wife liked about me was that I helped the kids, right? And so this woman came out with this report, and it's very long, and I've got to answer it in court because I'm pro se. But my point is, really the upshot of this, aside from dog's a good barber, is that learning how people lie, not that they lie. I was talking to John Kiriakou about this today in the backstory. Everyone's got a way they lie. And some people will just blatantly lie, right?
Yeah.
Some people will deny things. Other people in the case may have done
stuff up.
Or make stuff up, right? Or gaslight you or whatever.
Yeah.
This woman, I can tell, she'll tell this much of the truth, then leave out the relevant details. And once I identified that, I now have a tool to analyze the document and to make an argument in court in a coherent, easy to follow way. And all I mean by that is when I'm cross-examining her, when I point out and I've sent her letters on this, and I'm giving her a chance to correct these errors. She's not done it, but I'm giving her a chance. I'm like, you omitted this, 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 and this. And I can go point by point and go, you said this, and that's true. And that gives an impression. But you omitted this, 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 and this, which gives a very different impression. Why did you choose to not include? And I've also, so my only point here is that by identifying the way she lied, I'm able to coherently explain it. And I used on the show with John today the example of Bill Clinton. And, depends upon what the meaning of the word is, okay?
Yeah.
That's a type of parsing. And it's a different method than omission, okay? It's a different method. It's like, I'm going to take the word that you say, and then I'm going to break it down granularly until that we're debating what the word is. Right?
It's very lawyery, by the way. There's one other important factor in what you're saying, Lee. It's not just about, packaging the information in some pretty way. When you walk into court, whether it's a divorce or whatever, you've got years worth of details in your head, and you've got to put it into a short, concise thing, because the judge does not give a portion of a crap about you, your story, the whole deal. We got 50 other things to deal with today. Exactly. You've got to get it explained clearly in a way that makes sense and doesn't make it seem like a maniac ranting.
And I say that, I'm hoping no one watching goes through a contentious divorce or whatever. But you know what? Maybe it's a small claims issue. Maybe it's a neighbor whose dog, whatever. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And maybe it's not that at all. Maybe it's a employer or an employee, right, who you're having to deal with, and things are starting to go south. And being able to identify, and in the portion of the Patreon thing, we'll talk about this more. But this is what I'm hopefully being clear enough on, is this journalistic skill has practical, real world uses. And again, look, my approach on the divorce is I'm not out to get my wife or anything. I just want the truth to come out, right? Maybe the truth would come out and a judge or whoever would go, I don't care. Okay, so what? You've helped your kids.
Right.
No, I'm serious.
Yeah,
and
you're right.
they'd go, but I think it's outweighed by these other factors. I'm not interested in arguing that. You see what I'm saying? In other words, if that's someone's opinion, okay, I have a different opinion, but that's going to happen in life. And I realized that I think I was talking to a friend of mine about this, and I said, I feel badly for the person who's up against this evaluator woman, because if she's doing it to me, I'm not the only one she's ever done it to. Does that make sense?
Better equipped. Yeah.
Like she's biased. Period.
You're talking about this person who is evaluating, who's writing this thing for your wife. So you're saying there's other people who they've done this to who maybe don't have the experience that you have.
You're cutting out. Say it again.
If I'm understanding you correctly, Lee, you're talking about this evaluator who is doing this as a part of her job with the court, and there's going to be other people who have been kind of railroaded in the way that you are, who maybe aren't equipped to decipher the shenanigans.
Hey, Jason, FYI, you are completely, we're getting a bad connection.
Well, what we'll do is we're going to go over to the sponsor exclusive segment in just a few minutes.
I just know what happens with my internet here. Probably what we should do is end this and then pick up the Patreon part in about 10 minutes or so. Because I can just tell I'm having an internet problem. Does that make sense?
No problem. It does. We'll take care of that. People are going to be able to watch the deep dive that we're going to do on High Dive on patreon.com/Stranahan and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. We're going to talk about research. We're going to talk about journalism. We're going to talk about everything that's going on with Lee. And actually, I have some really interesting stuff to share with Lee that's going to intersect our collective interest in guerrilla journalism, guerrilla video, all the types of stuff that Lee is telling me about that I didn't know anything about, the Black Panthers and all that kind of thing. So make sure you tune in on patreon.com/Stranahan and subscribestar.com and patreon.com